Everyone is still and quiet as we wait with suspense in the air. The still lake around us reflects the rose clouds and orange streaks of setting sun. We had paddled out into the lake to see if we could catch a sighting of the rare and endangered Amazonian river dolphins, known for their characteristic pink color. This was day 1 of a 3-day trip to Cuiabano, Amazon, and I had already been blown away by just how lush and rich in biodiversity it was there. Among one of the most exciting things was witnessing for the first time in my life the unique wildlife there, and having the lucky opportunity to glimpse rare endangered species. I was intently listening for any sound resembling a sputtering exhale, intensely watching for any break in the surface of the water. There, our guide whispered and pointed, and we saw a pod of 3 dolphins gliding through the water discreetly, saw their pink lump-shaped forehead emerge just enough to show us where they were, but still leaving us wondering where they would resurface next, where they were headed. Although I was in awe of such a sight, I was simultaneously infuriated by how passive I was, how passive we were as tourists, just rowing out in a boat to look at them. And yet, as much as we were thrilled to see the pink river dolphins trying frantically to take photos, nothing was stopping the contamination of the river. Nothing was stopping pollution from oil drilling nearby, or the prevalence of diseases such as the golf ball disease, a dermatologic syndrome affecting these populations of pink dolphins. I'm hiking uphill along one of the trails of the Tapicalaca Reserve with students in the CPS Ecuador summer field course. It's about 8 a.m. in the morning or so, and we're hiking to the Hocotoco station about an hour from our lodge. Once we get there, our guide, Diego, takes out a plastic container of mealworms and sets them down on a mossy rock, whistles. Everyone is holding their breath, listening closely. Suddenly, we hear some rustling coming from behind the bushes and trees surrounding us. Then out pops the Hocotoco ant pitta, a plump, round-looking torso with penguin-like spots hopping around on 2 twiggy feet. I felt myself tearing up because seeing them made me realize that we're losing them, and there are only 20 individuals left, and they only exist in Tapicalaca Reserve. Just that morning we saw 2 Hocotoco ant pittas, and that's about 1/10 of the entire population. It hit me that this is why conservation is so important. Keeping habitats and forests intact is so urgent and crucial to protecting species like the Hocotoco ant pitta that we are on the verge of losing. Seeing the critically endangered Hocotoco ant pitta was a sensational but also alarming experience that revealed how dire their situation is and how urgent conservation efforts for these endangered habitats and species are in this part of the world. This instills in me a strong conviction and sense of urgency that keeps me motivated and driven to help mitigate conservation issues. Northwest Ecuador, Esmeraldas Province, Bilsa Reserve. It's about 5 a.m. in the morning, and I'm trekking along in shin-deep, muddy path lit only by the light of my headlamp, and the headlamps of people in front of me. I hear the sounds of distant birds, of howler monkeys miles away with their boombox calls, salient roars, almost like those of lions in the savannah. We stop, listen, walk, stop and listen, looking through my binoculars, guiding the lenses along the limbs of trees, through leaves of the canopy. I spotted a singular male long-wattled umbrella bird singing at his leg. He would hop, bend forward and down, spread his wings out, and emit a low, one-toned call, the feathers on the long throat wattle prickling up, extending outward. Up until this moment, I had only read about long-wattled umbrella birds in papers. In this moment, however, I was seeing one of them call for mates right in front of my own eyes. These anecdotal experiences weren't just fleeting moments of witnessing these animals. These experiences left a lasting impression by reaffirming how important conservation is and fortifying my ambition to take action and dedicate myself to the cause. Traveling in order to explore and appreciate nature is an aspect of my study abroad experience that has instilled in me a strong desire to help preserve and conserve the biodiversity and natural habitats that exist there. My study abroad experiences have enlightened me about complex interactions among the multiple facets of conservation. Through this learning opportunity, I've been able to delve deeper, engage more directly, and better understand how conservation issues and human communities are intertwined. Traveling to the Galapagos made me reevaluate our standards for conservation efforts and made me realize that there are many limitations to conservation projects that need to be addressed. For example, going there made me question how effective recycling programs were. So there are 3 different types of bins designated in populated areas. So there's recycling for paper products, for compostable waste, and for plastics/aluminum. And beyond the 3 types of recycling that the city municipality deals with, it seems that whatever litter there is on the streets gets little attention. In a place so centered around conservation, I was a bit shocked to realize that there is still a lot of room for improvement. And if this is the Galapagos we're talking about, then what about the rest of the world? Within the culture of tourism of the islands, there still exists among some subsets a lack of respect for the animals there, namely the sea lions. I still saw many tourists with behaviors that did not align with the rules and regulations that have been put in place. For example, they would get uncomfortably close to the sea lions for pictures and not maintain a minimal distance of 2 meters. They would get way too close and would try to touch them. I also observed in some instances a general lack of regulation and monitoring in enforcing these rules. I also learned through listening to guest speakers from Parque Nacional Galapagos, from Fundación Charles Darwin, that there often is a lack of manpower and funding for conservation projects, especially regarding the eradication of invasive species. Not only are invasive species hard to regulate, but the difficulty of removing them often is perpetuated by social and cultural factors such as dependency on agriculture, immigration to the islands, attachment to domesticated animals, pets, or lack of education, lack of environmental awareness. This made me realize how intertwined and multifaceted conservation issues are, and how it's important to tackle these problems from multiple angles. All of these experiences served as reminders that there is so much more in the world than our cities. There is so much life and so many diverse habitats and organisms that coexist with us, whose survival we are also influencing. It reminded me that despite our power and influence, we are so small and insignificant in the context of the entire earth. Yet we assume this mighty self-importance, and that makes us dangerous. We often change landscapes, drill into bedrock, cut down forests without giving a second thought or caring about how our actions have ripple effect consequences that affect other life forms as well. Our heavy dependence on fossil fuels, skyrocketing greenhouse gas levels that continue to break historical records, have already set in motion irreversible effects such as ocean acidification and sea level rise, warming of the ocean temperatures that cause bleaching of coral reefs, and that ultimately exterminate them. Already we are experiencing extreme natural weather events related to climate change. We are largely responsible for driving, so we should do something about it, because not only are we destroying habitats and endangering biodiversity, we're putting ourselves at risk. There's going to be stronger storms, more hurricanes, more flooding, more irregular weather patterns affecting agriculture and the economy and causing displacement of people in all areas of the world. I think it's so important as humankind to be aware and mindful of how human systems are changing landscapes and destroying the environment, and to do what we can to minimize that by working together to create sustainable solutions. To do that, we need to be more humble and open up our minds and widen our perspectives to include the rest of the world. My experiences abroad have made me a more aware, observant, and sensitive student to the different facets of conservation and its limitations. In order to create sustainable, effective change, vulnerable communities ought to be empowered with the resources and skill sets they need to do so, and everyone has to work together to approach problems from different angles, building up from a small scale. Although there is still a lot more for me to learn, I am grateful that I had the opportunity to visit these different communities and take time to stay there and absorb what I could. It helped me to realize how crucial it is to take time to attain a deep understanding of how complicated human systems interact with complex natural systems.